Alfonso Rodriguez was already convicted of attacking and sexually assaulting 3 other women around Crookston before he was convicted of killing Dru Sjodin. Rodriguez has spent the better part of his entire life behind bars. But Sister Pat Murphy says that should not give the state the right to execute him.
Imagine a busy Saturday afternoon in November, the kind of day where the mall parking lot is full of people. Families, college students, everyday life happening all around. A 22-year-old woman walks out of her shift feeling good. She just treated herself to a brand new purse. She's on the phone with her boyfriend. Easy conversation. Nothing heavy. Just 2 people talking the way they always do. For minutes into that call, she says 2 words. Okay. Okay. And the line goes dead. Her boyfriend doesn't panic. It happens. Signal drops. He'll hear from her soon. Except he doesn't. She never shows up to her second job that night. Her roommate waits, then worries, then calls police. By the next morning, her car is still sitting right where she parked it. Exactly where that phone call ended. Her purse is inside, her shopping bag on the seat, but her keys are gone. Her phone is gone. And then investigators notice something on the ground. Right next to the passenger door, a knife sheath. She didn't drop it. It wasn't hers. Someone had been there. Someone had planned this. And by the time anyone realized what had happened, she was already gone. What you're about to hear is based on real events. This story contains details of abduction and murder that some viewers may find deeply disturbing. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. November 2003. The world feels different when you go back there. No social media, no smartphones with GPS tracking built in. MySpace hadn't even launched yet. If you wanted to find someone, you called them. And if they didn't answer, you waited. Grand Forks, North Dakota is the kind of place that earns the title of one of America's safest small cities. A tight-knit college town sitting on the banks of the Red River. Home to the University of North Dakota and the roughly 60,000 people who make up its quiet, welcoming community. The kind of place where neighbors still know each other. Where people leave their doors unlocked and think nothing of it. It's the Saturday before Thanksgiving. Students are finishing up their last shifts before heading home for the holiday. The Columbia Mall is busy with shoppers. The parking lot is full, bright, open. Exactly the kind of place you'd tell someone is perfectly safe. And in 2003, if you wanted to know whether a convicted sex offender lived nearby, or had just crossed the state line into your community, you had almost no way of finding out. The registry systems that existed were fragmented, patchwork laws that stopped at state borders. Information that should have been public was buried in paperwork and bureaucracy. That gap in the system is not a minor detail in this story. It is the story, because what happened in that parking lot on that ordinary Saturday afternoon didn't just devastate one family. It exposed a crack in the law so wide that it took an act of Congress to close it, and the woman at the center of it all was just trying to get to her car. Her name was Dru Sjodin. She was born on September 26, 1981, in Minneapolis, but she grew up in Pequot Lakes, Minnesota, a small town where everybody knew everybody, where Friday night games mattered and your neighbors showed up when you needed them. She was the kind of person people gravitated toward naturally, not because she demanded attention, but because there was something genuinely warm about her. Something real. She was athletic. She played basketball, volleyball, and golf growing up. She was artistic. She saw the world differently than most people. And she could make something beautiful out of almost nothing. Her senior year of high school, her classmates voted her homecoming queen. And if you knew Dru, that wouldn't surprise you at all, because it wasn't about popularity. It was about the way she made people feel when she was around them. After graduation, she chose the University of North Dakota in Grand Forks. And she didn't go there to coast. She went there to build something. She was studying graphic arts, pursuing a degree she was genuinely passionate about. She interned through UND's aviation program, one of the best aerospace programs in the country. She was already thinking about where her life was going to take her. She joined Gamma Phi Beta sorority, but not for the parties or the social status. Her chapter was actively working with underprivileged teenagers in the community. And Dru showed up for that. Because that's who she was. She was also carrying 2 jobs on top of everything else. Working at Victoria's Secret in the Columbia Mall during the day, and pulling evening shifts at a local nightclub to support herself. Full schedule. Full life. Never complained. And she had something to look forward to. A trip to Australia, planned for the spring of 2004. She had been counting down to it, talking about it the way you do when something feels like the reward for all the hard work you've been putting in. She had a boyfriend named Chris Lang, someone she cared about deeply, someone she called on her way to her car that Saturday afternoon the way you call the person you always call, just to talk. Just because that phone call was the last time Chris Lang ever heard her voice clearly. Take a moment with that. A young woman with 2 jobs, a full course load, a sorority, a community she gave back to, a degree she was chasing, and a trip to Australia she was dreaming about. She wasn't just a name on a missing poster. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's best friend, someone's person, and she deserved every single thing she was working toward. While Dru was building her life, Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. had spent most of his adult life dismantling other people's. He grew up in Crookston, Minnesota, a small town just 25 miles from Grand Forks, the same quiet corner of the Midwest he would eventually return to. Under the worst possible circumstances, his first violent offense came when he was just 21 years old. He asked a woman for a ride home. She trusted him enough to say yes. He repaid that trust with a knife. It didn't stop there. In 1980, while on a temporary leave from a psychiatric facility where he was supposed to be receiving treatment, he attacked again. He found another woman and stabbed her twice. She survived only because she fought back hard enough to get away from him. He was convicted of rape, aggravated assault, and kidnapping, and he was sentenced to 23 years in prison. He served every one of them. On May 1st, 2003, Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. walked out of prison. And when he did, he was classified as a Level 3 sex offender, Minnesota's highest risk designation, reserved for individuals that law enforcement believes pose the greatest likelihood of reoffending. Here's what that classification is supposed to mean in practice. A Level 3 offender triggers the most intensive community notification requirements. Law enforcement is authorized to actively alert the public, neighbors, community organizations, schools, that this person is living among them. It exists precisely because the system recognized that people like Rodriguez don't stop. He was 50 years old. He had been free for exactly 6 months and 22 days. And on November 22, 2003, he drove to the Columbia Mall in Grand Forks. Dru Sjodin was 22 years old, finishing her shift, buying herself a new purse, calling her boyfriend. She had no idea he was there, but the surveillance cameras did. Saturday, November 22nd, 2003, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Dru clocks out of her shift at Victoria's Secret, stops at one of the other stores in the mall, treats herself to a new purse, the kind of small, ordinary thing you do on a Saturday when the week is finally over. She walks out into the parking lot and calls Chris Lang. Nothing about that call was unusual. It was the kind of conversation 2 people have when they're just checking in. Easy, comfortable, routine. The kind of call you make 100 times without thinking about it. For minutes in, she says, "Okay, okay." And the line goes dead. Chris doesn't panic. Signal drops all the time in 2003. He figures he'll hear back from her soon. He puts his phone down and waits. He never stops waiting. 3 hours later, his phone rings. Dru's number on the screen. He answers immediately, but it isn't Dru, just static, and the faint sound of buttons being pressed on a keypad. Like someone fumbling with a phone in a pocket, or in the dark, or with their hands tied. The call traces back to an area near Fisher's Landing, a rest stop on Highway 2, about 6 miles east of Grand Forks. She was already being moved. That same night, Dru's roommate starts to worry when she doesn't show up for her shift at the nightclub. She calls around. Nothing. She calls the police. The next morning, investigators go to the mall. Her car is right where she left it, exactly where that phone call ended. Her purse is sitting inside, the shopping bag with her new purchase still on the seat, like she just stepped away for a moment and was coming right back. The passenger side door is unlocked, and on the ground beside it, that knife sheath. No signs of a physical struggle anywhere around the car. No screams reported by anyone in that parking lot. Not a single eyewitness ever came forward. A busy mall. A Saturday afternoon. Dozens of people coming and going, and nobody saw a thing. That's the detail that haunts the investigators who worked this case most deeply. It wasn't slow. It wasn't loud. It didn't give her a chance to fight back or call for help. It was over in seconds, before her boyfriend thought to worry, before her roommate noticed she was late, before anyone even knew to look. She was already gone.
Lined up early for another massive search. Once they were checked in, they were bussed out.
We're going to fan out and we're going to go this whole coulee drop. It's 1 mile.
A week and a half after Sjodin's disappearance, searchers are still dedicated, but what they may find has them worried.
It's scary. You want to hope you find something and you want to hope you don't find something, you know. It's just mixed emotions. It's an eerie feeling.
But volunteers push on.
I gotta put myself in her mother's situation or her father's situation. I would want to be, I'd want my loved one found one way or another, if it's dead or alive, just to have closure.
Within 24 hours of Dru's disappearance, Grand Forks showed up. The police put out a public appeal, and the response was something nobody in that department had ever seen before. UND sent an email to every single student, every faculty member, every staff employee on campus. And people responded immediately. Flyers went up everywhere. On storefronts, light poles, bulletin boards, Dru's face and name spreading across the city faster than any news broadcast could carry it. Friends from her hometown of Pequot Lakes drove hours just to hand out flyers and join the search. Busloads of volunteers were driven out to Fisher, the area where her phone had last made contact. National Guard members combed fields, ditches, riverbanks, and rural roads alongside everyday citizens who simply refused to go home. Every single morning, investigators packed into a briefing room at the Grand Forks Police Station. Local officers, county sheriff's deputies, FBI agents, border patrol, all of them in the same room, setting aside rank and jurisdiction and agency politics like none of it mattered, because none of it did. Thousands of tips poured in from across the region. Investigators worked through every single one. Then 4 days after she vanished, one tip changes everything. A caller reports seeing a known sex offender shopping in Grand Forks on the same day Dru disappeared. Investigators pull the mall's surveillance footage, and there he is, Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. at that mall, that day. Now here is where this investigation gets remarkable. One of the first critical pieces of evidence found near Dru's car was an empty knife sheath, just lying on the ground beside the passenger door. It had a label on it, Tool Shop. A detective named Mike Ewan took that detail and ran with it, tracking down exactly where that specific brand of sheath could have been purchased. He walked back into the station a short time later carrying a brand new matching sheath, with the knife still inside. Now here's the thing. Investigators had already searched Rodriguez's vehicle once. They found a knife, but it appeared clean. Nothing to act on at the time, until Ewan set that matching sheath down on the desk. The moment it clicked, everything moved fast. A search warrant was obtained, and when investigators went back through Rodriguez's vehicle properly, they found biological evidence inside that car. Evidence that placed Dru Sjodin in that vehicle. On December 1st, 2003, 9 days after she walked out of that mall and never came home, Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. was arrested. The community exhaled for just a moment, and then remembered they had the man who took her, but they still didn't have Dru. Rodriguez was in custody, but he wasn't talking. The alibi he offered investigators fell apart almost immediately. He claimed he had been at a movie theater that evening. The film he named wasn't playing anywhere in the area that night. It never was. But knowing he did it and finding her were two very different things. Winter came down hard across North Dakota and Minnesota the way it always does. Relentless and unforgiving, search areas became unreachable. Frozen ground, heavy snow, visibility that made the already vast rural landscape feel endless. The searches slowed, but the waiting didn't. Her mother Linda Walker waited. Chris Lang waited. Her family and friends and everyone who had put up a flyer or walked a field or driven out to fisher in the cold. They all waited, hoping. 147 days after Dru Sjodin walked out of that mall. On April 17, 2004, her body was found in a field near Crookston, Minnesota, 25 miles from that parking lot. She had been there all winter. There are no words that make that sentence easier to hear, and there shouldn't be, just the quiet, devastating weight of what it means. A young woman who was planning a trip to Australia, who had a new purse in her bag and a full life ahead of her, found in a field 25 miles from where she was taken, because Rodriguez had transported Dru across state lines. This became a federal case, and that distinction mattered enormously. North Dakota does not have the death penalty, but the federal government does, and for the first time in more than a century, a federal death penalty case was being tried in North Dakota. In August 2006, after a trial that laid out every piece of evidence investigators had painstakingly built, a jury found Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. guilty of kidnapping resulting in death. He was sentenced to die, but the legal journey didn't end in that courtroom. Over the years that followed, Rodriguez's defense team filed appeal after appeal, challenging forensic testimony presented at trial, raising questions about his mental capacity at the time of the crime, and arguing that his attorneys had failed to properly explore an insanity defense on his behalf. In 2021, a federal judge agreed that errors had been made. The ruling pointed to medical examiner testimony that was later found to be unreliable, and concluded that Rodriguez's trial attorneys had not adequately investigated or presented mental health evidence that could have changed the outcome of the sentencing phase. His constitutional rights had been violated. The judge ruled. The death sentence was overturned. Then, in 2023, federal prosecutors announced they would not seek the death penalty again. Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. was resentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was moved to a high-security federal prison in Florida, where he will spend the rest of his life. For the people who fought hardest to see justice fully served in this case, that result has been painful to accept. The lead prosecutor who tried the case made no secret of his frustration, believing deeply that the original sentence was just, and that the process that unraveled it was not. That frustration is completely understandable. What is not in dispute, and never has been, is that Alfonso Rodriguez Jr. abducted and murdered Dru Sjodin. A jury decided that unanimously, and he will never be a free man again.
It, in the end, doesn't justify the means in this regard.
In September, defense attorneys will make their final plea in the case that Rodriguez is insane and should be taken off death row. In Crookston, Neil Carlson, Valley News Live.
Tonight, we're tracking breaking news in the long-time murder case of Dru Sjodin, a Minnesota native and North Dakota college student. Convicted killer Alfonso Rodriguez is now admitting that he killed Sjodin as he sits on death row. 5 Eyewitness News reporter Jessica Miles is working to get new details tonight. She joins us live from the newsroom with the latest. Jess?
Bill, a 416-page motion was filed in U.S. court in Fargo today, and in it, 2 medical experts who interviewed Rodriguez back in June concluded he was sane when he killed Dru Sjodin 10 years ago. Sjodin was 22 years old when she was kidnapped by knife point from a Crookston mall back on November 22, 2003. Her body was found that next spring in a ravine a mile west of Crookston. The new documents out today reveal Rodriguez didn't kill her by accident, as he has maintained while on death row. The documents also give chilling new details about how he chose her as a victim. It goes into more detail about how he killed her and how he also placed a bag over her head when she began to bleed from the mouth to prevent blood from spilling into the car. His appeals have been denied all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, but under what is considered now a death row prisoner's last appeal, Rodriguez, with a new set of 4 attorneys, 2 of them here in the cities, is making a habeas corpus appeal, basically claiming he is being wrongfully held.
Here is something that should have never been possible. A man classified as the highest risk-level sex offender in Minnesota could drive 25 miles across a state line into North Dakota and virtually disappear from any system designed to warn the public about him. In 2003, that was not a loophole. That was just the way it worked. Sex offender registry data existed, but it was fragmented, siloed within individual states, with no unified system connecting them. No way for a community in one state to know who had just walked in from another. No way for a parent, a neighbor, a student to search a single database and get a complete picture. Dru's case didn't just expose that gap. It made it impossible to ignore her family, while carrying a grief most of us will never understand. Made a decision to turn that pain into purpose. Her mother, Linda Walker, became a voice for change, speaking publicly about violence against women, pushing for legislative reform, refusing to let her daughter's death become just another headline that faded with time. And the country listened. In 2006, President George W. Bush signed Dru's law as part of a landmark Child Protection Act. It created the Dru Sjodin National Sex Offender Public Website, a centralized, fully searchable nationwide database, free and accessible to anyone with an internet connection. For the first time, a parent could search by name, by zip code, by street address, and see registered sex offenders across every state, territory, and tribal jurisdiction in the country. Today, that database tracks more than 850,000 registered offenders nationwide. 850,000 because of a 22-year-old woman from Pequot Lakes who was just trying to get to her car. In her hometown, an annual golf tournament still runs in her memory every year. And the website that bears her name carries her photograph. Not a crime scene, not a case number, not a headline, just Dru, smiling, the way the people who loved her will always choose to remember her. There is so much more to Dru Sjodin than what was taken from her. She worked 2 jobs without complaining, mentored teenagers who needed someone to show up for them, carried a full academic schedule, and still found time to be the kind of friend people drove hours to help find when she went missing. She was artistic, she was athletic, she was warm in the way that some people just are. The kind of warm you can't fake and can't teach. She had a new purse in her bag and a trip to Australia on her calendar. She had a whole life mapped out in front of her, and she deserved every single mile of it. Her name is on a law now, a law that has quietly protected millions of families across this country. Parents who searched a database before their kids went trick-or-treating. Communities that knew who was living among them before something terrible happened. That's not a consolation prize for what was lost. That is Dru Sjodin continuing to show up for people she never got the chance to meet, the same way she always showed up for everyone around her. Remember her name, not because of how her story ended, but because of everything she was while she was here. If the story moved you, share it, because awareness is how cases like Dru stop happening. And if you or someone you know has been affected by sexual violence, please reach out. The National Sexual Assault Hotline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 1-800-656-4673. You can also visit nsapu.gov, the registry that now carries her name and her smile.